trying to make some sense of all that's going on in Coventry. It's not just a local story. It's something important for all of us. Well, good evening to you. Sox are 1-0 in the series, and you don't have to tune to that game until, 30 minutes from now. So I'm just trying to hold on to you. And I'm trying to hold on to you for a couple of reasons. A, it's important for business. B, we got an important conversation tonight. The Central Coventry Fire District has been a real barn burner, all pun intended. And there's a lot to be learned from what's going on with it. It's a product of consolidation. Regionalization is a big buzzword in Rhode Island. It's all in the details. I'm not so sure the devil's involved here, but it's a big money matter. And we've got two guests here, State Representative Patty Morgan, who's been an advocate for a lot of the change that's been going on there. And we have the head of the firefighter union who's been kind enough to come here. Dave Gorman will talk to us about the union's perspective. So stay tuned for that. We will shorten the rundown just a little bit this evening in order to make some ample time for our discussion about Coventry. The indictment that came down late yesterday from the feds may start to dissipate that cloud that still looms over North Providence. We'll talk about it. State Treasurer Gina Raimondo joined me on the radio today, and we had a pretty torrid conversation over a couple of things. I want you to understand what's happening there. And you know what? Speaking of the ball game, it's nice every once in a while to see a little teamwork. I was an umpire for a long time, and you didn't see that kind of collaboration back in the day. So we'll touch on that. Well, let's get into it right now. Here's the headline. Well, here's the subject matter. Cloud over North Providence. I write that because there has been one. Now you see this headline in the Journal today. Developer Bakari indicted on bribery conspiracy charges as part of North Providence corruption scandal. Look, this is all about the Three Stooges. The Three Stooges who took the brown bag and split it up, all to change zoning, all to allegedly. It's kind of a funny thing here. They're convicted, so I don't have to say allegedly, but it's all reportedly about making way for some space on Mineral Spring Avenue, of all places, for a shopping plaza, a stop-in shop that never got built. But Target 12 has been on this, and Tim White, there's nobody better at breaking this stuff down. Here's what they ran last night about this indictment.
71-year-old Richard Bakari, seen here in exclusive Target 12 undercover video from 2011, is facing one count each of bribery and conspiracy charges. Federal prosecutors say Bakari, owner of development company Churchill and Banks, gave three former North Providence town councilmen $50,000 to secure a vote for a supermarket project. Those councilmen, John Zambarano, Joseph Birchfield, and Raymond Douglas, are currently serving time for their role in the scheme.
I went there twice in this guy's office, face to face with Richard Bakari, negotiating this deal. I said, you know what, guys? I said, but I put my on the line over here.
In this secretly recorded FBI audio obtained first by Target 12, investigators say Zambarano is heard bragging about how he was paid the bribe after they voted to approve the supermarket project in 2009.
So I go down there. I was in this car, right? I pulled up. His Mercedes, whatever, parked this way. I pulled up close. I opened the window. He threw the money in a bag right on my lap. He says, "Thank you, bud." So cool.
Bakari and his company were both charged in the indictment. His company faces a potential $1 million fine if found guilty.
They got the Three Stooges. They got the middle guy, as Tim reported to you. But it's always been a wonder, where is the money source? So this is the allegation, that this gentleman is the money source. One way or the other, this thing will probably move pretty quickly in the federal court system. At the end, it would be nice to lift the cloud of brown bag culture off the town of North Providence. You know why? Because the people of the town of North Providence, although rough and tumble and full of grit, are the salt of the earth in Rhode Island, and they deserve better. Now, let's move to the state treasurer. She was on the radio with me today on WPRO, of course, from noon to 3. Here's headline number 1 that she has been dealing with. Union Commission critic alleges violations. Raimondo calls it a political attack. We've talked about this before. We've discussed this thing with this guy, Ted Seidel, at a press conference last week. He's a blogger for Forbes. He's an investment banker. He's a lawyer. He's all these guys, and he has been hired by local labor to really do a once over on pension investments, namely the hedge fund industry, and he's made some allegations. The treasurer did a better job responding to them individually, and I can't list them all here today, but she's got a lot on her plate right now, including a decision that she brought on herself with the Investment Commission yesterday, and we mentioned that as well. That headline talked about the idea that gun stocks are going to be divested from our pension fund. So these are two stories that are running with Gina Raimondo as we speak. Without breaking down the stories individually, there's a theme here that I can't help but articulate, and that is Gina Raimondo is hurting herself, stringing out this formal announcement for running for governor, and I gave her a little hard time about the timeline where she says it's going to be end of the year. Here's how some of that went on the radio today.
Dan, it is a big decision. It's easy for you to say, but it's a huge decision. This state is in a lot of trouble. We have cities on the brink of bankruptcy. We have people that are unemployed, underemployed, public schools aren't working, crime is up in the capital city. We have work to do. And when I decide that I am ready and able and in a position to win, that's when I'll announce. And I have been very clear for a long time, I'll make the decision and the announcement by the end of the year, and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, you know, my point of view on this, and I expressed it to the treasurer, is you can't have it both ways anymore. You can't be raising more than a couple of $1 million and then making provocative decisions as the treasurer. And so, you know, she did a little bit of the wobble. Here's a small piece of that as well.
Last couple of weeks, being the target of sort of dirty politics and special interest attacks, you know, it's a definite taste of how acrimonious the campaign is going to be.
So you're suggesting that this last couple of weeks gives you pause as to whether you're going to run?
I don't know if it gives me pause or fortifies me, because the people of Rhode Island need someone to stick up for them. The people of Rhode Island need someone who's not afraid of well-funded lobbyists and special interests. You know what? She's just playing it. She's just playing it. Here's the thing. When you're making provocative decisions with our taxpayer and pension money, and there's all this thing about a governor campaign, we deserve to be able to analyze it in its true context. And it's gone way too long, and she's raised way too much money not to clearly enunciate what her intentions are. And she needs to do that, because the straight shooter reputation that she says she has is diminished every single day that she doesn't. Last night, game one, inning one. This was funny when Pete Kozma thought he'd turned two. In fact, he never caught it. And there wasn't a person watching on television, a person in Fenway or the other 5 umpires that didn't know that he didn't catch it. The old days, they just stick by their guy and suffer with a very, very bad decision. There's Mike Matheny coming out to argue. But guess what? There's a new culture in umpiring, and that's a good thing. I mean, I'm an old umpire from way back. You always backed up your buddy, even though you know he blew the call. The bottom line here is that they got together and they fixed the call, and that's why we need more of that kind of umpiring, and we don't need the doggone instant replay. We don't. Stay away from that. More umpiring like that, better baseball. Game 2 tonight. All right, Central Coventry, and I'm guessing a pretty direct debate between 2 players in the Central Coventry Fire District Budget Challenge. Stay with us. Yeah, it's not often that a little tiny population in our vast viewing and or listening area, depending on the forum, grabs so much attention, but the Central Coventry Fire District dilemma has, and for good reason. And so I know a lot of the folks in Central Coventry, you know, just don't like bring a consultant on who's got a phone and yeah, shut your phone off, for God's sake. Hey, that's live television, sort of. Anyway, well, answer it, for God's sake. It might be your mother. You got your wife. You know.
Not the union consultant, I'll tell you that.
I can't take you Republicans anywhere. Good to see you, Patty.
Good to see you, too.
Good to see you. I'm not going to hold your hand. Dave is the guy who runs the police union. It's always,
Fire union.
I mean, the fire union. See, I'm all perplexed here. I think this is a fire controversy as opposed to a police controversy. Anyway, this is an important story, so let's get right down to it. Here's a headline that ran this week that kind of capsulizes the latest part of the chapter here. Struggling fire district finally passes a budget. And it's interesting because the budget that was passed actually doesn't pay for everything, which is unique. So once upon a time, a handful of years ago, under the idea that this would be better for the citizens of Coventry, 7 fire districts were whittled down to 4, correct?
Yes.
And Central Coventry Fire District is the largest of the 4, correct? And serves the most people. How many, Dave, how many folks do you actually have in the district?
Population-wise?
Yeah.
We have about 18,000.
Okay, so 18,000 folks, and do the math on the number of families. Let's kind of go. I could put up a timeline. In fact, Steve, put up a timeline here. It's hard to read this, but we put it up so that you could study it. We'll throw it up a couple of different times. It's a recent timeline of some of the challenges that the district has had, entering receivership and a special master appointed, and you know, folks are kind of investigating the finances of the fire department, and then Judge Brian Stern, who's kind of managed all of this thing, and you know, closed the fire station or threatened to, and then the Coventry Citizens Task Force, which is citizens that raised up and responded to the entire thing, and then a new board has been recently elected, and a new budget's been approved. Okay, that's the end of the story, and thank you guys for coming, and we're all done. Let me start with you, Patty. Tell me what you think this story is about.
Well,
in broad terms.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to tell you it's not about safety. All right. The people, no matter what, are going to be safe. There's going to be fire and emergency services in that district, and no one should worry about that. Right? This 5.6 million.
I think you already probably started a point of contention, because you would.
This 5.6 million.
You would say that's not true.
Correct. I think their board president had said it's not true as well. Their attorney said it's not true as well. All that was told to Judge Stern.
Right. So the
financial
and structural conversations here, at their crux, have a contention as to whether adequate services will be provided for the amount of money that has been allocated. And you're suggesting that don't worry, no matter what we do in restructuring, there'll always be the proper services. So go ahead and finish your thought.
Well, I was going to say, this 5.6 million that was just approved is more than was approved in 2010. And it is enough money to provide fire services until we restructure, until the district restructures.
We're kind of in the middle of the sandwich, so go to the bigger picture.
All right,
here.
The bigger picture is, it's not really about passing a budget, it's about whether the people of this district have the right, and I believe they have the right, to control the district and its spending.
Okay, what do you think the story is about, big picture?
Big picture, I think it's about Rep. Morgan and her self-appointed Citizens Task Force basically trying to dismantle the fire district. They have some misguided belief that the union's too strong, or the union runs the fire department. You know, the one thing I will agree with her on is 5.3 million does run the fire department. It does run the current situation. You know, we'll make it work. However, the board chooses not to let it work. Chooses to, you know, they chose not to accept our concession package. Then they turned around and chose to liquidate.
All right, let me talk about the other kind of big picture. Then we'll get into the nuances of the argument. This old archaic system of having fire districts is weird. It's just weird.
I'll agree with that.
It's a weird form of government, and I would like to see every town that has them, and there are too many that do, I think, just fold them all under and give us one efficient, well-trained, well-compensated fire department that treats emergencies at the best level. These little fiefdoms of fire districts and small governments and kind of ad hoc management doesn't seem to be very healthy, big picture.
No, I mean, it's a flawed system, absolutely. 30 people in a room could decide what the budget was, who was elected as a board of directors. I think this district was very poorly managed. I mean, when I got involved in this, they were looking at a 70% tax increase. That's just not fair to the people who live in that district.
Are the changes that are happening here, will they en route to a better overall system in Coventry and serve as an example for Rhode Island? In other words, to wean off these fire districts and to make this a municipal governance like you find in the big cities?
You know, I don't know whether it leads to municipal departments. That's certainly one option that's there. In Coventry, the town council has rejected that. But for instance, Bristol is spending about $35 per person for fire service. Central Coventry, it's $400 for every man, woman, and child. That's a flawed system.
Do you dispute that number?
I do.
How?
Absolutely.
Why?
It's skewed to the fact that Central Coventry further provides street lighting and fire hydrant rental. So you know, we're paying from our department budget to Kent County Water Authority, another antiquated taxing system, to pay for or rent the fire hydrants, even though we don't use them.
But Dan,
You know, that's part of $500,000 from that budget line.
no, it isn't. It's about $300,000 for both of those items, maybe a little bit more, maybe up to $400,000, but not more than that. That's not what broke this district.
All right, you know what, when we come back, we'll talk about what broke this district. We may have two different points of view, but that's okay. Stay with us. All right, on the issue of the Central Coventry Fire District, let's dig right into it. And, you know, we'll all be frustrated because we never have enough time to get on all the nuances. But State Representative Patricia Morgan is with me. And Dave Gorman. It's Morgan and Gorman. I've been practicing this thing all day. Is the head of the firefighter union. At the core here, we should probably work our way backwards. This vote this past week by the people supporting the board's budget was for $5.6 million. The interesting thing I find about it is that at this meeting that we're showing here is more or less understood by the electorate that it really doesn't get you to the end of your next fiscal year. In fact, it leaves you short. The weird part of it is, if I understand, is if they hadn't passed it, a state law that was recently passed would revert the budget back to its current status, which is a higher number, correct?
That's right.
How screwed up is that, by the way?
Very screwed up.
Yeah.
Should never have passed.
That's dumb.
Well, what that does is it gives you the same exact opportunity as a city or town. Now, under the Title 44 of the general laws, you're able to revert back if, and that was, I'm sure, put in place years ago, so you have to have, exactly. And that was the whole mechanism. Fire districts being, like you said, archaic, nobody really cared about the fire district.
Now, I should say,
Dan,
yes.
the people have voted 4 times.
4 votes.
4 votes to change this flawed system. They want it changed. At what point is this government going to listen to the people? When do they have a right to throw off the yoke?
As soon as the lies stop from Ms. Morgan and her gang.
What lies?
Lies after lies, mischaracterizations, lying about the contract, telling people the firefighters get paid $125,000. The people have took her word at face value.
What are the principal misconceptions that you think are out there regarding the union's position on the operation of this system?
Number one being that the taxes were going up 78, 60%. Taxes went up because of the valuation. The rate had to change.
True.
We were simply in a valuation year, a reval year.
The people only care about the check that they're writing. So
correct.
That went up.
That went up to a point. Understand, we haven't had an increase in over 6 years. But the budget line has been held. The taxes have been held in 6 years in this district. They chose not to increase it for whatever reason.
What?
Losing state funding.
No whispering. Say it or don't.
2010 is when the folks froze the budget. Since 2006, when this district merged, when it consolidated, and it consolidated to save money, and this is really a laughable thing because it's almost doubled in that amount of time.
Yeah.
The operating budget has doubled.
And why did it double, Dave?
Well, it doubled simply based on the fact that we redeployed the firefighters who were stationed throughout the town to give better coverage. You know, other fire stations prior to the merger had 1, maybe sometimes none, for firefighters in it. We were able to accomplish a minimum of 2 firefighters in 5 fire stations.
All right, listen. The most of the folks who I've talked to look at this thing and say, this is the sweetest firefighter deal you'll see around. You contend with that?
Absolutely.
Just give me a brief explanation as to what you proposed and why you think it's fair.
The proposal that we proposed for concession-wise, you know, it had a reduction of staffing in it, had a reduction of minimum staffing in it, had increase to employee health care. You know, there's a misconception that a lot of cities and towns use that employee health care as a self-insurance for workers' compensation. They don't necessarily have a workers' comp policy with the private sector.
What is the amount of money in an annual budget that you need to make good even on the concessions that you've offered?
About 3.8, 3.9 million.
Well, wait a second. You just passed a $5.6 million budget, and they say it doesn't last.
Correct.
So you're telling you've made concessions that save $1.5 million?
Yeah. Yep.
Do you buy into those numbers? I know you didn't negotiate this.
I
the
did
board
negotiate it,
but
and they actually sealed the concessions. The union would not allow the concessions to be revealed. But my understanding is that they were one time. In other words, as soon as you realize them for the crisis, then they go away.
Were they short-term hooks?
Because the board wanted them in the short term. The board requested to have a 1-year concession. You weren't there, Pat.
Yeah, but you know, along to help you help them, you've got to help them help you. You've got to provide a solution that has legs.
We requested a 3-year agreement to work out a plan, a road map for the next 3 years. And we've been in concession agreement since the financial crisis.
You know, Dan, that's the problem.
give-
This contract is so generous and it's so fat that it really needs structural change. It doesn't need to be extended 3 years.
I'd like to hear some specifics, because she runs around the banter of structural change. What is structural change?
Well, it's a conversation for another day. Give me a 10-second synopsis as to where you think we're going here.
I think this district, it's clear that it's flawed. This system is flawed, so it's about moving to a new system now.
Okay.
And liquidation sets a clean slate. There can be a new charter that sets in accountability, transparency,
Can you survive under
safeguards.
liquidation? Can we have good fire service there?
No, and the taxes would triple.
All right, that's a conversation for another day. Guys, thanks for coming. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Dan.
Admittedly, that conversation leaves you a little empty because it could go on forever, and it seemingly has in Coventry. If you've got feedback from what you just heard, here's how you do it. 228-1886. Leave a voicemail. Tell me what you think. Email stateofmind@myRITV.com. And of course, on Twitter and Facebook, it's Dan Yorke Show, YORKE. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30. Go Sox. Good night.